This is Futurebuilders podcast, and I'm your host, Teemu Uotila. I'm an enthusiastic future explorer working with a Finnish tech company. Together with my guests, we are building the future today. Are you in? This is Futurebuilders podcast with Pasi Vainikka, co-founder and CEO of Solar Foods, a company that creates food out of thin air. Dr. Vainikka is enthusiastic researcher in energy field. He is also adjunct professor at Lappeenranta University of Technology. Together with him, we'll be finding out how to make more environmentally friendly food in the future. Are lab-based foods a threat to traditional farming? What kind of foods will we eat in the future? So, this is the second part of discussion with Pasi about how to create sustainable farming and food from solar and CO2. In last episode, we were talking about this empowering consumers with, electricity, electric cars changing the landscape, and then this new kind of electric food changing the landscape. So, do you want to continue on empowering consumer perspective?
Yeah, it's very interesting that I'm in the belief that that at the end it is the consumer, every one of us that make the change in and help in solving the climate problem. And now it is the food sector that seems to be also feeling the impact while new alternatives become offered. We can take one analogy from a transport sector, which is the electric vehicle. So it's not actually only the vehicle what is happening, but that information and energy infrastructure in that car together change how the consumer and the vehicle owner can impact the future. So one can imagine that when you refill a combustion car, so you can ask that what is the dialogue, then impact and influence you can have to what you do when you refill, and how do you talk to the oil that flows into your car. There is no really dialogue. But now when we start to have larger and larger batteries, plug-in hybrids and even full EVs on the market, what changes is that actually you can buy electricity and make any kind of contract for the energy what you want on competitive basis. So once you buy that vehicle, so you can charge the battery of that car with the electricity of your choice. So suddenly it can be your own solar PV or wind power or whatever, hydro, nuclear, whatever, carbon neutral stuff. But it is the consumer who makes the decision, and it has nothing to do what the parliament decides about the mandate for biofuels blending. So it's very different in logic. So suddenly you are empowered with that. And then there are different kinds of things what the technology platform can do. So it can actually take electricity to your second house and support the electric grid and provide the storages in the 100% renewable system and so on.
Dependable on national grid necessary, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. And for example, a Scandinavian example is that once the whole Scandinavian Baltic in practice is one electricity market. So once you plug in the vehicle, its battery can provide different kinds of grid services and directly compete with in southern Finland against a hydropower plant in northern Norway in real time because of the information infrastructure. So of course the car is connected to the internet. So this is one description how the consumer can be empowered with new technology. And now in food sector, once there are new alternatives, then it is the consumer too. But you have to have something to offer.
Yeah, of course, you need to be the pioneer in there and disrupt it. That's, by the way, one interesting aspect is that how will this also actually empower these energy companies more or less? Because naturally you're dependent on energy and their nuclear power and water facilities. So It's an interesting topic. Will they be more empowered in the future, or will they be less empowered in this domain?
You mean utility, large
Yeah,
utility?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what will certainly be different, what we already see, is that the power generation capacity that is publicly owned is at risk. That philosophy of public utility is kind of challenged now.
Yeah.
And there are new investors who wind power is one example of that. So any fund actually can collect, let's say, 50 million and establish a wind park and make a power purchase agreement with, let's say, Google server facilities and sell the electricity there. So it's very different to somewhere in the parliament or in the city councils, the energy utilities decide that let's build a big power plant. So that is changing. What the utilities could do is actually kind of manage the system. So for example, storages at large scale or somehow providing grid services, regulating power is something that with the existing capacity could be of the future model for big utilities. Having said that, it's also very interesting that once the electric vehicles are deployed, suddenly Teslas and Nissans and Volvos, once the fleets are deployed, so one morning actually you realize that you have some gigawatts of power
transferring
that you can charge or discharge. So I wait for the morning that, let's say, Elon Musk walks into a utility or a state in the USA and says actually that we have the largest power generation capacity in the state. So how about doing some business? And then let's see how it goes.
How it changes the dynamics there. Yeah, that's actually one, in my mind, one thing that people mistakes when they talk about Tesla. They think it's a car manufacturer, but in my mind, they are an energy company.
Yes.
Yes. The cars are only one means. To
and when you add some IE, so once the car is sold, you know the profiles of that fellow if they're allowed to get to access. So what you do, what you like, how you behave, your family and friends friends of friends. So they know beforehand how you will use the car.
How will you
and you can predict everything and how the fleet is managed and where it is, and you can of course track location. All that is now unexplored, even though technically it's possible. So I expect this change a lot.
Yeah, and you'll expect that this will also happen in the food domain in some way or other.
Yeah, so now in food is also happening that we can produce egg without chicken and milk without cow, and we do food from air. So it's very different to the concept of killing a cow. It's a bit different, and maybe the concept of animal will be challenged.
How do you, by the way, see when you're doing something totally new? Do you see that this is, or some people would then make assumptions that what you do is actually GMO food, or because you are basically editing this food from air, and people are always quick to jump conclusions. So do you see a risk in there that people will mistake?
Well, that then depends on the awareness of the customer. We say that we don't use genetically modified organisms. We don't do that. It eases a lot in the regulation part. But then how it is accepted, GMO, non-GMO food, depends on the customer. There are many GMO things that seem to work well in the US and are well perceived and even benchmarks. So it actually, on the paper, it might frighten Europeans as well. But I believe that once it's on the shelf and people taste it once and don't notice anything, then it's like electric vehicle that you think that it's crap before you've ever driven it. So I've never met anyone who have driven electric vehicle and afterwards said that, by the way, that was actually crap, and I definitely want a diesel car next time. You never see that. So that might be the same with food.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, once you taste it and realize what it's way better in there, and I do hope that people will change it in their minds. How do you see, what is the biggest competitor, for instance, in the food domain in future? Like, are they going to be with Solar Foods? Are they going to be crickets or something else, algae or whatever?
I think there's a lot of market for everyone. So each complement each other.
Yeah.
So I don't really see. There are alternatives. And I would say that if there are many different kinds of plant-based burgers, then you need to decide which one you go after, and it might not be actually because of the plant-based meat that is there in between, but somehow how it's flavored and things like that. So the consumer decisions are
people want variety always. So
yeah. So in that sense, we see that we are complementing the protein landscape.
A lot of these traditional farms, for instance, nowadays has a big issue because it's very expensive and not very profitable. So can you basically license the IP to some farmers so that they could convert their own farms? Let's say they have a cattle farm, they could convert that to solar food farm.
We might be just on the edge of competitive size.
Yeah.
So it depends what is the investment capability of the farmer. Maybe there are a couple of wealthy farmers that actually could do it. Maybe I could even name them here in Finland. But maybe we're not. I don't see that farming as such would be at risk, or we would be, or similar kind of new food, lab-based food, would be risking anything from the farmers, because that is needed as well. The problem might be that doubling the agricultural land globally is not going to happen. It's not possible.
Yeah, there's only limited amount of ground.
Yeah, limited amount of land, and then there are some environmental impacts.
Yeah.
Actually, 1/5 or 4th of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from those actions, and they would rather go to zero than double.
Yeah.
So the conflict is self-evident there. So building significant new growth on the existing piece of land might be, or just by expanding that somehow, increasing the area of land might be at risk. But otherwise, I'm not sure. Really, that the farmers should be
involved in there.
And still, if you look at plant-based meats and plant-based stuff, they still need the agriculture feed.
Yeah, of course.
But we don't.
Yeah, you can produce the food for the cattle, for instance, and stuff like that. So you were talking about this European Union in the last episode. How hard is it to work with them? Is it just that it takes a long time, or is there some sort of resistance from a legislation perspective?
For the non-GMO, we are quite happy. There is good regulation. Okay, it's quite lengthy, about 2 years to get our food approved. It's the same for everyone, but still it's might be a problem for Europe compared to some other countries.
Yeah.
So actually, foods will be on the market first elsewhere. But at least we know what the rules are.
Yeah.
So for investors, like we're a startup and dependent on investment for in the future to scale, The risk is in the unknowns, and if you know something, even though it will take some time and investment, it might not be that much of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's but yeah, I think you need a good amount of capital in order to have this sort of like pilot program that then can create, because it's to my understanding, it relies quite heavily on technology and technological prowess. So, yeah,
we need to prove how it scales. The reason why we now built a pilot plant in near Helsinki is that we need to prove that it scales.
Yeah,
we've now scaled within 1 year 1,000 times. So coming from a coffee cup size to a reactor size of man. When we do the second 1,000 of scaling, then that's industrial.
Yeah.
So we're quite happy where we are at the moment.
By the way, how long does it take from start to full coffee cup of this powder? How long does it take to make?
It's a continuous process,
Yeah.
so it's difficult to answer that it's continuously
it's
producing. So it's about the size of the reactor. Then
okay, so that's
then
the
how quickly you can.
Is it correlation how much energy you use in there? Or,
it's also it's correlating. So volume of the reactors, and then electricity what you consume, and then CO2, nitrogen. We at commercial scale, one reactor, which is about a size of let's say it's half of a bus.
Yeah.
So as tall as bus, but a bit thinner.
Good size.
That produced 3.5 tons per day.
Okay. Well, that's
roughly,
a good amount of stuff then. Yeah. How do you, if you look at the future of food, what form will it take in your mind? Will it be these futuristic protein bars that everyone's going to eat, or are we still going to have your traditional meat, vegetables, and whatever in the future? If you want to feed, let's say, 10 billion people.
In my view, there are a couple of things that much of the food, for example, let's say Western or Finnish diet, there's the concept of potato that you have in foods in various forms, and it's not that fancy. If you have French fries and bread, cheese, let's say egg or scrambled egg, some drink, shake, porridge, yogurt kind of thing. These all are suddenly, when you start to think it, they are kind of bulky stuff where it's actually easy to integrate these new components. Then there are some exceptions like plant and a vegetable, carrot, and meat texture that you would need to. They are, I would say, important cases, but still a segment that you can find a specific solutions for. And if we continue producing plant and plant-based stuff as we do now, carrots or cabbage, then I think we can continue like that. But then the main bulk of calories and like, let's say, potato, scrambled egg, and beef, then large proportion of the potato and egg part can be replaced quite easily with something new, and then there even might be the cultured meat on the plate one day. So I don't expect that people want to compromise much, and I don't think they will have to. Actually, I think that the egg without chicken and scrambled egg from that will be just so much better. It doesn't burn stuff.
It tastes better and easier to manage.
So it's actually no one really. After that, maybe the traditional egg is quite brutal. So once you have that, it's I think there might be this kind of shift.
Yeah, people always like convenience. So more easier you can get stuff, faster it's always adapted in there.
Yeah, and maybe it's even more carefully done.
Yeah.
So once the egg has been really thought of by the company that provides that.
By the way, regarding Solar Foods, is there any chance of contamination in the process with the food, like with chicken eggs, salmonella, or meat with other things, or is it this like totally isolated? That
for a former researcher, the concept of any chance is a bit risky. But if you compare the concept of pig to what we have, we are in medical purity class.
Yeah.
Everything sterilized once we produce it. So I wouldn't worry.
So
the concept
very
of
low
pig
probability,
transportation and slaughterhouse, my concerns would be on more on that side.
Yeah, so very, very low probability on that.
Yeah.
If you look at your company and stuff you do you see that you will have many different products in future within Solar Foods?
Yeah, or empowered by Solein. So once you explain the concept, how we produce protein and this kind of single cell, and it's like a flour, then you integrate it. It's a lengthy story.
Yeah.
So actually, we've launched a brand in San Francisco in mid-January for the protein, which name is Solein. Solar Foods single cell protein, and we vision that there could be the Solein tag in many products on the shelf in the future. So it's kind of Intel Inside or Gore-Tex that it's this
trademark
cloth that has this specific fabric. Its name is Gore-Tex, and then people associate that how it doesn't take up water and things like that. So that could be, and then where it is, then there's a lot of choice, and
that's up to the rest of the people who do it. So if you look for your plans within next few years, what needs to happen that you are sort of like happy with the end result when it comes to Solar Foods and the company itself? What do you want to achieve?
Let's say in 2 years we would be happy to with a go-to-market.
Yeah.
So that we would be out with a product or within a partner's product. And the first full-scale plant just about in 2 years would be operating. So in my view, in a sort of reasonable time scale, is about 2 years to achieve that. And then the rest is scaling and having more impact so that you could actually produce so much so that it would have an impact.
Yeah. But what's your plan in that sense? That do you need to? How far is your scope in the future? Do you plan things 1 year ahead, 2 year ahead, or 5 year ahead? Do you have anything like that when you do this stuff? Yeah,
you plan maybe different things with different time scales.
Yeah.
Cash flow is something that is very
that's very short. Always.
And then the strategy of the company is, I would say that it's 2 plus 5 plus 15 years.
Yeah.
So that 15 years means that you have a vision, which is the state of things, how you think things are after or around within 15 years' time.
Yeah.
And one example of that is our thinking that electricity is the new primary energy, and you need the disconnection from agriculture to make significant impact, and that can be empowered by cheap electricity.
Yeah.
And that is something that is happening regardless of what we do. We don't have anything to do with it. We just take advantage of that development. Then 5 years could be that how do we go to market and scale, and the first partnerships, and how do we go global?
Yeah.
So we have some thoughts of that, of course. And then 2 years is kind of, you have a staffing plan and you have a technical roadmap, and you know, where that's like an execution. So
Yeah,
that's how I would see. But it is very important for us, and why not to any company that is dealing with technology and the future, to have this vision that how do you see the future will be, and then you derive your current positioning from that. So that's how we.
Then you can, you know, you can always you cannot change history, but you can always affect the future.
Yeah, I think you know, companies like that have to have an opinion on future.
Yeah, definitely. It makes total sense. Well, we are running out of time soon, since you're in a hurry, but. If you want to tell our listeners, what would be the 3 most important points to understand on food without farming? What would be the key takeaways to the listener on that?
Maybe I mentioned that only one is that be amazed. I think it will be, and be open, because there will be a lot new products coming to the market that skip traditional farming. So try out and
don't be afraid.
Yeah. So everything that is provided, let's say in developed countries, is carefully dealt with and approved. So there's nothing wrong there. And also bear in mind that you can actually, one of the largest impacts what an individual can today have for the benefit of climate is actually to see what you eat.
What food you eat and how much waste you produce.
Yeah, so, exactly. So just be curious.
Yeah, that's one good thing that I definitely liked about this is that if it's a sort of this powder form, you don't need huge packaging on stuff. Like if you buy a cucumber or whatever, there's always plastic around and a lot of other packages. So I think this one you can provide it in much simpler form. Everyone can go into a store and scoop it up in sort of like one big bowl, for instance.
Yeah, if it will be served like that, but maybe it will still be in some existing food.
Good.
But I agree, there's a lot to do in packaging.
Yeah. So where can people hear more about you and what you do? Do you have what would be your digital sites that people can reach you?
Yeah, naturally we have a website. If you go to solarfoods.fi or soline.fi or com, and we're active with the name of Solar Foods in social media. So we keep updating our news there and progress there. That's perhaps the best way, and also the media coverage that we attract. We also post things there. So there are also news that you can find in one condensed place that are written in an understandable manner. So it's not only about technology.
Science papers only.
Yeah, exactly. So to follow that.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Pasi, for your time, and we'll definitely need to have a second round on this at some point when you launch the product and when you're out there.
Thank you. Looking forward.
You just listened to Future Builders podcast with Pasi Vainikka. To find out more about solar foods and producing food from thin air, tune in for the previous episode. The future is here tomorrow. Join the discussion on our LinkedIn page, We Are Future Builders, and listen to more Future Builders podcast on wearefuturebuilders.com.